All right, looks like we just lost Kosta for a second. We'll get started once Kosta gets back, and then we'll obviously cut this part out of the interview when we re-upload it.
All right, sorry guys about that. I'm having some connection issues, but hopefully I'm good now. All right, well, welcome everyone to another episode of the Bull Take Scouting Podcast, and we are joined today by our special guest, current Liberty offensive lineman and 2024 NFL Draft prospect Xavier Gadlin. How you doing today, man?
I'm great, man. I'm doing good. It's good to be here.
Awesome. We're glad to have you on. The first question that we like to ask every prospect that we have on is, when did you start playing football and what made you fall in love with the game?
I started playing football when I was probably 5, playing flag. Moved on to tackle football pretty quickly when I was in Waco. You know, the league that I was playing in, like, you couldn't play with your age group if you weighed a certain weight, like, above them. So I was always playing with older kids because I was always bigger than all the kids my own age. But so that's when I started playing. I don't know when I fell in love with it, but it was probably sometime around middle school whenever things started to matter a little bit more. You know, you get in the district and you start to win district championships, and football starts to get a little bit more important because it's like, oh, we're competing for something now. And then you move into high school, and not only is it district championship, it's now going state playoffs and things like that. So it's probably around that time where I really started to fall in love with the game and understand what it could do for me.
And do you have a favorite memory from your football career so far, whether that's high school, college, maybe even youth football?
I've got a bunch. It would depend on what era you really want to hear about, to be honest.
Why don't you give us one from each?
Let's see. Favorite moment for youth football is scoring my first touchdown when I was probably like 12. It was a defensive touchdown, which is kind of wild when you think about it because I've been an offensive guy for most of my entire life. Middle school, we won a district championship. That was really fun. When I was in high school, we broke kind of what we called a school curse, which was not getting past the second round for like years. And we got to the third round my senior year, which is really, really fun. Playing at the Myrtle Beach Bowl in Tulsa, it's probably one of my most fun moments when I was there. And then when I got here, beating BYU and Arkansas in like back-to-back playing weeks was top tier so far. Only to be, taken over by hopefully a conference championship this year.
Like the sound of that. I like the sound of that.
Real solid answers, man.
So let's retrace your journey to Liberty a little bit. So you transferred to Liberty after playing at Tulsa. Why did you initially choose Tulsa over a handful of other schools that you had offers to?
Yeah. So when I was coming out of high school, I was getting recruited mostly mid-major. Had one Power 5 offer to go to Virginia. That came closer to signing day, more like when I was in the middle of my senior year. But for me, Tulsa was like a really good fit. It was close to home. They were really competitive, and they had a really good program up to that point. And I felt really good about Coach Blesh and Coach Montgomery, the coaches that recruited me over there. Academically, it was small class sizes, not the biggest school, had my major I wanted to study, and I really just felt like that was the best fit for me at the time. So, So that was really the main thing that took me to Tulsa.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what went into progressing so quickly at Tulsa? You started off as a redshirt, and then you were starting regularly as a sophomore. So that was pretty impressive. And just what went into being able to make that jump?
Yeah. I was blessed early on that Coach Blesh told me I was going to redshirt, but in being there over the summer and in camp, I got to travel with the team my true freshman year, which was good to see, how the team operates, how we travel, being able to get that kind of experience is invaluable as a freshman because not everybody in your class is getting that. So I was blessed to be able to do that. And then also with the guys that were in front of me and the guys we had in the room, I knew I wasn't going to play my first year, but the next spring, I essentially became the starter at right tackle. And, I think that might have been the plan early on. I can't remember, to be honest. But once I got the starting job at right tackle in the spring, had to, earn my stripes a little bit, take my lumps a little bit. We had guys that were really, really good on the defensive line. Travis Gibson is one of them who quite literally kicked my butt every day. He's playing with the Chicago Bears now, as he should be. But it was just that kind of maturation period that didn't stop there. I was seeing those guys all spring and then all fall. We did defense or drills against the defense. So that was really the biggest thing that helped, is just the competition I was going against every single day was something that was preparing me to go into games.
Yeah, I mean, makes a lot of sense. And, after that, you chose to opt out of the 2020 season. And that's something that was a really hot topic, as particularly in the NFL. We saw a good amount of players end up making that decision. So why did you decide to go that route?
For me, it ultimately came down to the fact that I knew that I could not be 100% focused on the season because I was always worried about, is this the day that I'm going to get sick? And I knew that if I was going to be thinking about that, then I couldn't commit what I needed to the season. And then ultimately it wasn't going to be productive for me or for the team, because you don't want anybody who's half in, half out. Even with everybody being as concerned as we were about COVID, if you were going to play that year, you kind of had to take the consideration that, hey, I'm probably going to get sick and I'm just going to have to deal with that. And that just wasn't the place that I was at the time. So I made the decision to opt out, and it sucked for a couple reasons. One is like 60% of my relationships that I had on campus were through football. And it's not the same of being injured where you can still go to meetings, practice, workouts, travel, all that kind of stuff. I didn't do anything with the team that year. And in the midst of not doing anything with the team went on to have the most successful year that they had since I've been at Tulsa. I mean, we rattled off 6 straight wins in conference, 2 big games, one in overtime and one in double overtime. Guys are having their biggest years. We go to a conference championship and get to play for that, and then go to a bowl game that I hadn't been to a bowl game since I've been in college. So it was rough to kind of see that much success happen when I was away, because it felt like, wow, I've been here for 2 years, and then the year I don't want to play, y'all just all right, now we're going to go to the conference championship. So no, that part of it wasn't fun, but it made me understand and appreciate the game that much more, because I knew that I still wanted to play and I knew that I could still contribute. So
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like a tough decision, and obviously a lot of different factors went into it. You mentioned that you couldn't do anything else with the team. So what was your routine like trying to stay in football shape so you're ready for, the next season?
So when I was away, luckily for me, we were an afternoon practice team. So in the mornings, nobody's using the football field. And also, luckily for me, Tulsa didn't always lock the stadium. So I could get up there at 6 a.m. and just run on my own, even though guys were coming in and out of the locker room and stuff like that. I could get up there and run on my own because I'm not around anybody. And it's early enough in the morning to where, like, nobody's up. Like, only athletes are up at that point in time. I also got really lucky and blessed that the guy that I was living with at the time was from Tulsa. And not only was he from Tulsa, but he had a weight set in his garage, because I knew that if I was going to opt out and then just have to go work out at like a public gym, I might as well just play football anyway, because at that point I'm just taking the same risk. So I got really lucky that my roommate at the time had a weight set and his parents let me go work out in their garage. So super thankful to them. So yeah, that was it. I would wake up in the morning and go run or lift, or run and lift, depending on what my day was like. Come back, have class. I was dating a girl at the time, so like we would hang out because she was working in the medical field, but she would be able to like be safe enough to like hang around me, and knowing that I wasn't around anybody else made it a little easier too. But other than that, I was just a straight up student who just happened to be on the football team technically, but just wasn't around him.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like it was a crazy time for everybody, but especially for you, making that transition from football to student, and then you made the transition back to football the following year. You end up playing another season, and during that time, you got to play with guys like Tyler Smith and Chris Paul, who both ended up, going to the NFL. Tyler Smith became a first-round draft pick. How important was that to you and your development to be able to play alongside those guys?
Oh, it was great, and it was super important. I mean, those are guys that having both of them on the team at one time is something that people can only hope for, especially when you think about the difference in class that they were. I mean, CP had been there since 17, I think it was. Tyler got there in 2019. But they were both just super duper talented. Tyler could move a house. Tyler could pick up a house and move it if he wanted to, and quite literally, like, does that on the football field all the time. Just his raw power and strength, and his hands are just like huge mitts that once he gets them on you, it's pretty much over with at that point. And then CP is entirely too athletic to be 6'6" and like 330 pounds. It doesn't make sense at all. That guy, I mean, he ran a 4.89 at the combine, which was the fastest among maybe all line or maybe just G5. I can't remember. But still, running a 4.89 at that size just doesn't make sense. And, I credit those guys for setting the example of what it meant to be a really, really good college player, but also be a really, really good professional player. I mean, Tyler came in immediately and had a really big impact on the Cowboys team that made it to the playoffs. And Chris Paul didn't play a lot, but his role was growing. So, I mean, it's just the idea that I got to see both of those guys in college and now get to stay connected to them as friends and, hopefully future teammates, if that's how it works out, is just something that I'm really grateful for.
Yeah, I mean, it's super cool that you got to have their help along the way. And so at that point, after the 2021 season, you decided that it was time to enter the transfer portal and enter the next step of your football journey. So can you take us through first deciding why it was time to end your career at Tulsa, and then why you decided to go specifically to Liberty?
Yeah. So my freshman year at Tulsa, the university rolled out a program called True Commitment. There had been some things happening financially that just weren't going well for a while before I got there. And it came to a point to where the university decided to cut a lot of programs in order to save the accreditation of the university, or else the University of Tulsa might not have existed. So it was a really difficult decision on a bunch of people's parts. But one of the programs that ended up getting cut was the Master's in History, which is something I knew I wanted to study. It didn't really matter much when I was a freshman because I'm not getting my master's right now. Like, I can just focus on my undergrad. But then as I got to right before my senior season, I had to think about hey, if this degree isn't here anymore, is there anything else I want to do and study here? Because I didn't want to have to leave. I never wanted to leave Tulsa. I wanted to stay there for all 6 years and be able to play for Coach Montgomery and, for all the guys that were there and Coach EA and his strength staff and all that kind of stuff. I didn't want to have to leave. But for me, I understood how important my education was to me and for the future goals I had. And with not having that degree plan there, ultimately I was I'm going to have to go somewhere else to go get my degree. So that was the primary reason for me leaving. And then in making the transition to Liberty, I tell people all the time, I can't tell you what it was that got me here. I just know that this is where I was supposed to be. I tell people all the time the story of when I was visiting North Texas, and it's 45 minutes from my house. So one of my best friends in high school went to North Texas. We played football together, but he was just a student there at the time. And while we were there, I was hanging out with him, and we were going over the schedules of different. We were talking about different colleges I was going to. Talked about Liberty and went to Liberty's schedule and was we're talking about it. I was yeah, we got BYU this day, and then on November 5th we'll play Arkansas. And I had to stop for a second and did I just say we? And it was around that time I was okay, this might be moving in one direction. So at that point, started to settle in that was probably where I was going. I still had a couple of visits to take of places that I really, really wanted to go to and was excited about. But ultimately, once some doors closed, it kind of became the thing of, yeah, this is where I'm settling on. And I remember texting my dad and telling him, I'm certain I'm going to Liberty. And then I texted him again. It was certain's not really the right word. I'm settled. Because it wasn't certain about, is this what it's supposed to be? It was, I can settle on the fact that I'm going to go here and be content and feel this is where I'm supposed to be. And whatever happens when I'm there is what's supposed to happen. And ultimately, it was the best decision for me.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's worked out so far. You had a really good year last year. the team had a pretty promising season, and now there's a really exciting head coach hire with Jamie Chadwell coming over from Coastal Carolina. So take us through, how it was the first year and how you're excited for the upcoming season.
I'm very excited for this season. Coach Chadwell, I can see why they were so successful at Coastal. Because of the way he runs his program. He's very player focused. He's very relationship oriented, and he demands the best out of his players. But that's also because you're going to get the best out of him and his staff. I tell people all the time that I haven't seen a staff that loves to be around each other this much. Specifically, the weight room staff. I mean, those guys, they could be doing any other job, and as long as they were doing it with each other, they would probably still have the same amount of fun that they're having right now. It's infectious. Awesome. Because then it becomes something that we feed off of, and because we see them working well together, we want to work well with them and then work well within each other. So, I mean, I'm very excited about what this year holds. It's our first year in the conference, looking to go to the conference championship, and we put the pieces together and we have the year that we're supposed to have. I think we can get it done.
Yeah, I mean, those sound like some great goals. Now I want to just kind of dive into your tape a little bit. What, in your opinion, are your biggest strengths on the football field?
I think my biggest strength is my ability to play multiple positions. It's something I've been blessed to do since I was in high school. I can remember being in high school and playing like everything but center in a game, which doesn't always happen. And then, getting to college and being blessed with coaches who were really big on cross training. My last 2 years there, my first 2 years at Tulsa, I played primarily right tackle, filled in at some left whenever we needed some help or things like that, but it was primarily right. And then my last 2 years there, I was playing guard and center. I mean, you having Chris Paul and Tyler Smith at the two tackle spots kind of allows you to do that. But I was playing some guard and center, and it really helped me a lot to just widen the range of positions that I could play. And by the time I left Tulsa, I had played everything except for left tackle in a game with actual game reps, live game reps. And then coming to Liberty and, having that same kind of mindset, I knew that it wasn't necessarily about where I was going to play. It was more of like, I will play wherever was best for the team. I'll figure that out and we'll get to it. So I got blessed to play right tackle, started right tackle, and then moved to left guard in pretty much every game we played in. Had a game where I played left tackle primarily. I started at left tackle because we had a left tackle go down. And now I'm looking to play left tackle again this year where we're slotted position-wise and things like that. So really excited about that. I feel like that's really my biggest strength is just the ability to play pretty much every position on the line.
Yeah, I mean, versatility is something that any team looks for, and it will definitely benefit you as you look to move on to the next level next year. But all great players know that there's always some things to work on. So what are some things that you're looking to work on this off season and going into next season?
Off me, dog. I'm sorry, I had a fly on my arm and I did not like it. I think the biggest thing for me this season, looking at all the goals I have and all the things in front of me, I have to be a more dominant player than I have been. And that's kind of the mark of a really, really good offensive lineman. I mean, talking about the two guys we were talking about earlier, Tyler was a very dominant offensive lineman. There weren't a lot of guys who were A, beating him, or B, even getting close, to be honest. I mean, that was a guy who was shutting things down early, moving guys in the run game. And I feel like for me, that's where my next step lies primarily. Because now that I know I can play all five positions, it's now how good can you play those five positions? How much better can you be than the guys that you're going against? So for me, I feel like that's my biggest thing is just getting to the point to where I am a dominant offensive lineman. And then at that point, a lot of things will, how do I say this? At that point, the film starts to speak more for itself than it already has.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, as you're working to improve and become more dominant ahead of your final season of college play, there is also around the corner potentially entering the NFL draft process. And we know that your name has gained a lot of steam in NFL draft circles because Senior Bowl director Jim Nagy has pointed out that you're in the conversation to be the most talented group of 5 offensive linemen, which is really high praise. So how much would you say that the NFL is on your mind right now?
NFL is very present on my mind. It's something that as I've gone throughout the summer, the idea that I could actually play in the NFL has become much, much, much more tangible. And for a while, I didn't think that was the case. I mean, to be honest, at the end of the season, I didn't think I could be drafted, to be honest with you. And more so because I'm my own worst critic, and I understand that the things that I don't do well are difficult. Not that are difficult, but teams are looking to ding you on anything, when going throughout the draft process. So for me, I didn't think I was going to be drafted. So when seeing, different grades and, getting attention from people like Jim Nagy, not that it's bolstered me too much, because I try to remain as humble as possible, understanding that I still have an entire season to play. And things can go, knock on wood, they don't, but things can go completely left. So I think for me, the biggest thing is just it's become much more tangible in going throughout the summer, and now, not that I'm playing for that, but it's definitely something that if I handle business the way I should this year, it becomes even more of a reality.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And, as you seek to make that a reality, are there a couple players in the NFL that you kind of model your game after?
I don't know, to be honest. Yeah. I'm a O-line play all across the board. But when in saying that I'm a fan of O-line play, it's I just like watching offensive lines play with each other and play well together. I think because that's just what the crux of the unit is. It's just the ability to take 5 guys, put them on the same page, and then go out and execute a play. I mean, we're half of the offense. So if one of us is wrong, then it's hard for anybody to be on the same page. And I think for me, not necessarily studying or modeling my game after one specific person, but just understanding how offensive lines works together as a unit. And I've just really become a big fan of that.
What is your favorite part about playing offensive line?
2 things. One, it's just the simple fact of moving somebody from one place to another when they're doing everything in their power to not have that happen. And those blocks are really fun whenever the running back or somebody runs right by you, because I've had a couple of those plays where you move a guy from one place to another, running back runs right by you, and you're like, yeah, that was kind of me. But the other part is when defenses are throwing everything they can at you and nothing works for them. When offensive lines are really, really good, not only are they in good chemistry with each other, but it becomes something where it doesn't matter what blitz shows up. We're going to pick it up and we're going to throw this ball to whoever we want to throw this ball to. And we're going to run the ball, and you can run a blitz to wherever we're running it to. But we see safeties rolling down and linebackers moving all over the place. We're going to call it out. We're going to pick it up, and then we're just going to go get 10 yards and move on. I think that's really the most exciting part about football for me, is just getting into such a rhythm where anything you call works and anything they call doesn't work.
Yeah, and that's a really good answer, and it's usually what we get from offensive linemen. Now, we've talked a lot about you as a player. Is there anything that you want to tell our audience, be it NFL teams or fans, about you as a person?
I do so much stuff outside of football. It's crazy. When I was in high school, I was in band and STUCO, which is student council, student government. For the last 3 years, I've been participating in theater, which has been really, really fun. I'm a music head. People ask me all the time, what's my favorite kind of music? I tell them I really couldn't tell you. But what I have started saying more often is that I could probably walk into a room, see who's in there, and then make a playlist for that room that everybody would like.
Yeah.
I can cook well, I might add. Yeah, that's probably it.
Why is it so important to you to cultivate all those interests, and then also on top of that, try really hard in the classroom on top of on the football field?
Cultivating those interests was always important to me. More so because I had the opportunity to do it whenever I was in middle school and then in the high school. And then as I got into college and started to understand the identity crisis that athletes can go through, while in their career and especially at the end of their career, it became even more important for me to cultivate interests outside of sports because they always say that the ball goes flat for everybody, and it's how you maneuver out of sports that can determine the rest of your life. And for me, it's always been important to have an identity outside of sports because when the sport is taken away from you, it becomes really hard to do anything else. Not as hard as when, like, all right, I got to step away, I'm not going to the next level, or maybe you are at the next level. And it's like, all right, it's time to retire, put it down. But like when guys get injured or guys get cut or get waived and don't get picked up, and then it's like you put so much into this, which not to say that that's a bad thing. Chase your dreams as passionately as you can, but don't do it to such a detriment to everything else around you, because then when the game is taken away from you, it's hard to maneuver and pivot out of that because you have so much more life ahead of you. Even guys who get to the NFL, the average NFL career is 3 years. And even if you take a guy like me who's been in college for 6 years, 3 years after, like I'm going to be 24 in September, 3 years after that's 27. I have so much more life ahead of me to live. And if the only thing I've ever put anything into is football, like in playing football, it's hard to find something else to do outside of that. So for me, it's always just been important to have identity out of that.
Yeah, and a part of your identity is your education. Like you mentioned, you've been in school for 6 years. You mentioned earlier, you wanted that master's in history, and that was part of the reason why you made the transition to Liberty. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about that and why the master's in history was so important to you?
So I've been blessed to know what I've wanted to do since I was in 8th grade, which is teaching coach. That's my calling. That's where I know God is leading me to after I finish college. And actually, that was the crux of the reason that I left, which is what we talked about. But also, it was just the idea of understanding that God will take care of what happens at the end of my career and like further into my coaching career, because I've always wanted to be an athletic director of a school district and was debating if I was going to stay at Tulsa to get like a business administration or sports administration degree or just go get this history master's, which is what I really wanted to do. And I can remember, just being at church one day or watching church at home when we were still at home and just understanding, like, I think God is telling me, like, he would take care of that and just go do what he was telling me to do now. But for me, history has always just been important because it was my favorite subject in in school, period, because I had great history teachers, people who made history not boring. A lot of people always say history is boring, and my first response is like, you probably had bad history teachers.
Yeah.
Because for me, history is super exciting. It's fun to learn about things that people used to do and how they affect us now. So for me, in going throughout my process and talking to people who had gotten secondary degrees and postgraduate degrees and stuff like that, they always said that if you're going to go get a master's, you need to do it in something that you're passionate in, because it's hard to find the motivation to go get a postgraduate degree for something that you genuinely just don't care about. Like, that's not what you want to do. If you're going to go do this, you got to do it in something that you're passionate in. So that was really the thing for me for choosing history and choosing the master's.
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
What is your favorite part of history to study and learn?
There's a time period from when people first landed in America to like 1877. That's my all-time favorite. And not just the United States, but also like Southern America too. Because I've been doing a lot of research on Haiti and the Haitian Revolution, because that's wild. Or it's just a wild thing that happened and everything that came out of it, stuff like that. And you also don't understand how interconnected the world is And honestly, I can get into this spiel if you want me to, but I could also move on. Like it
Go for
doesn't have to. All right, cool. So do you remember this is going to test your education, not your education, but like your memory a little bit. Do you remember like learning about the Louisiana Purchase?
Yes, 15 million.
Yeah. So the Louisiana Purchase only happened because people in Haiti succeeded in revolting against France.
Yeah, that's right.
Because Napoleon had landed America, but then went to go try to stomp out the revolution in Haiti, lost so much money that it no longer became like reasonable to hold all the land in America he was holding, sold it to America for cheap because he was just trying to get some money to cover the expenses of the war, and now America doubles in land size. Like the world is so interconnected, and people may not understand how connected it was because the internet wasn't necessarily a thing for everybody's life, but the world was so crazy connected that like so many things are causes for other things, like revolutions spark other revolutions, people having to sell land because they can't afford to have it anymore, and then we get everything that we have. And so for me, that part of history has always been really exciting. Also, like that part of history also includes slavery history, which has also been really interesting and important for me to learn because it's just the history of the people who look like me and from where I come from. So it's just that part of it is also really interesting to learn about.
Yeah, that's super cool to hear about, and it's definitely so important to cultivate all those interests. So thanks for taking some of that time to talk to us about all of those other passions you have outside of football. And we like to leave off on an inspirational note, and you've already inspired a lot of people I'm sure in this interview, but what is that single piece of advice that you've received at some point in your life, be it in football or outside of football, from really anyone? It could be a coach, it could be a teammate, a parent, anyone else.
My dad told me at a very young age that it's not what you know, it's who you know. And then I can remember watching the I Am Athlete podcast, and Fred Taylor added on to it. It's like, it's not what you know, it's who you know and who knows you. So the biggest, if you want to call it inspiration, I could say is just build good relationships with the people around you, because you never know what rooms your name can be in before you even get there. Jim Nagy tweeting about me when I've never even met the man is, it's a testament to maybe my on-field achievements, but also like who could have talked to him about me before he even knew what my film was? Who could have put my name in his ear that I was good to, or that, had a good experience with me? And even outside of football, the coaching world is so connected, the job world is so connected that you never know who you're going to run into that has heard something about you. And to even take it from being, individually beneficial, you never know whose life that you can impact by just the idea of having a good relationship with them. I've been able to help many of my friends by just being an ear to listen to, because, we've had that kind of relationship. So, for me, that's the biggest piece of advice or inspiration I could give, is just build good relationships with people around you. Because when you do that, not only can you be successful, but more importantly, you can help other people be.
Yeah, that's great advice, and I think you've given some great advice throughout the entire podcast. We really appreciate having you on. Wish you luck, this next upcoming season, your future potentially in the NFL, and then your future beyond football. We know you're going to do great things. So we really appreciate having you on.
I appreciate you guys, man. This was fun.
Yeah, this was a blast,
Yeah.
man.
Thank you. Good luck with everything.
Yes, sir. Flames.
All right. Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll be back with another episode soon.